Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Forward Progress with Paulo Salgueiro Jr. Today I am joined with Coach Jatkola from Barnstable High School. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Coach, here at Forward Progress, we like to talk about sports and how that plays a role in people's lives. But for some of our viewers, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of your path to becoming a head coach in football at Barnstable?
Yeah, just a guy who's passionate about the game of football. Grew up here on Cape Cod, played at Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School in South Yarmouth, and fell in love with the game there. And then was lucky enough to get a Division I scholarship to the University of Albany. I played for a tremendous head coach there, Bob Ford, who was an unbelievable mentor. And kind of just fell into coaching, didn't know what I wanted to do. And my tight ends coach at the University of Albany hired me when he got an offensive coordinating job at Salve Regina University. And I landed the offensive line coaching job there and really started falling in love with the whole coaching aspect and changing kids' lives and the recruiting. And that kind of started my path. Actually spent a year overseas in South Korea after my 2 years at Salve Regina, teaching youth in South Korea English, which was an unbelievable experience. Helped, create the man I think I am today, and being able to learn different cultures and different people. And when I came back to the States, actually coached at Dennis Yarmouth where I played for 6 years. We were lucky enough to go to 2 state championships when I was there. We won one of them. Took my first head coaching job at Monomoy Regional High School in Harwich, and then was recruited to Cheshire Academy in Cheshire, Connecticut, and was the offensive coordinator there for 2 years. And then was lucky enough to come back home to the Cape and land the head coaching job here at Barnstable.
All right, I've never been, but what's it like in South Korea? What was that experience like? Was that your first time going international? What was that experience like?
It was actually really incredible. So, like I said, I was coaching college football and loving what I was doing, but was still young and didn't know what I wanted to do, how I wanted to settle down and spend the next, 40, 50 years of my life. And my mom actually texted me. She had bumped into an old childhood friend who had been doing it, teaching in South Korea, and she said, "Do you have any interest in teaching in South Korea?" And I looked into it, and I said, "You know what? I'm 22 years old. I'm going to take a shot and try to do something fun." And had no commitments here, and spent 2 years there, and it was actually amazing. I loved everything about their culture, the respect factor that they have, the family, the unity. Learned a ton about that, and they loved having Americans there teaching them, so they were very receptive to us and respectful, and was just all around an awesome experience. I'd love to go back and bring my family and show them one day how cool it is too.
Was there any football being played down there or no?
Not a ton. There was actually, I remember vaguely, they were trying to start a team, and or a league, and we were like downtown Main Street, in what they called like American Town. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, like 22 guys ran out into the middle of the traffic at a red light and like did a football play. And they were trying to get people excited about football. And I was like, "What's going on over there?" And I had been asking people, and they're like, "I think they're trying to start a team. They're trying to create excitement." So I do remember that. But other than that, it was soccer, basketball. I played on a travel basketball team over there, which was really cool. They loved their basketball, and they had the Korean Basketball League, which was a really good league as well.
Cool. Great. So, Coach, was there a specific time, when you're growing up, were you always interested in football? How did the interest even begin for you in football?
That's an interesting story because I remember at a really young age. So we lived in Central Mass until I was in second grade, and they had youth football there, and my cousin played, and we would go watch him on Thanksgiving Day, and I loved football. And I always would, throw the ball in the backyard with my dad, and I always wanted to play. But Yarmouth didn't have a youth program when we got here. So for second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, I wasn't able to play. It was just more pickup. But I always had that passion for playing the game. And when finally they brought youth football to the town when I was in seventh grade, obviously I was, on first line to sign up. And playing the game is way different than what you think it is. When you get hit for the first time, it's so physical. And Even at that young age, I remember the physicality of the game and being like, whoa, do I really love this game? And as I stuck with it, and my dad made me stick with it, I fell more and more in love with it. And then in high school, was drawn towards basketball a little bit. And then as the years went on, I was like, I think football might be a better route for me. I might be, get better opportunities there. And then fell back in love with it again. I think like sophomore year going into junior year, I was like all in on football. And we actually got a new coach at that time, and he reinstilled the love for the game in me. And if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. So, but yeah, I can remember from a real early age being like I wanted to play football. There was something about that game that was special. So.
You mentioned something that I feel like a lot of athletes have probably said too, is where they probably wouldn't be where they are in their lives if it wasn't for a specific coach or even a specific sport. Can you tell me maybe a couple anecdotes about, maybe a life lesson you learned while playing the sport, or maybe a conversation with a coach that always stuck with you? I feel like sometimes we have conversations with coaches that we never forget about.
Yeah.
Like maybe even a coach might not even because they have those conversations all the time.
Yeah.
But was there a time where you really connected with a coach or had, a specific memory with the coach that always stuck with you?
Oh, I could probably go on all day about memories that I have with coaches that, helped shape me to get where I am today. I could go over a couple. I remember that coach, the same coach I was talking about that took over at Dennis Yarmouth, was Paul Funk. And the first time someone had really instilled confidence in me. I feel like sometimes, especially when we were playing at a younger age, there was that negative, you're not good enough, you don't hit hard enough, you don't do that. And I remember, when I was a junior, him saying, you can be this, and saying, you could be a Division I player. Get your grades right, get in the weight room, do all the little things right, and you could play Division I college football. And it was the first person that ever told me that I could do something, or actually believed in what I could do. And I remember that vaguely, that conversation. And that kind of, like I said, re-sparked my love for the game. I could go somewhere with this. And I remember I also had a college coach that I had a very serious surgery when I was a freshman, and I actually had a kidney removed. And I remember my tight ends coach, Nick LaFontaine, coming with his wife to spend the day with me several days after I had my surgery, and just sitting there with me and talking to me and just being a human being and being a mentor and a friend. And that always stuck out to me. Like, I want to be someone like that with the kids. It's bigger than the game. It's more important than the game. It's, taking care of these kids when things aren't going their way. And I've had so many great mentors. I worked for one of them at Cheshire Academy, who also, helped pave he recruited me to the University of Albany, was David Dykeman, who's actually working with the XFL now. And just him at the same thing, telling me I could do this. You can play at that level. You have this ability. And he's always believed in me, and he's recruited me to Albany and recruited me to Cheshire Academy and gave me a shot there. And I think so, just a positive reinforcement. And the coaches that made it bigger than the game. They wanted you to succeed as a person and did anything they could to help you get there.
Coach, I don't know if it's every sport like basketball or baseball, but at least for me, I feel like football, the relationships that athletes have with their coaches and the friendships that are made are so strong, right? Like, you still talk, you mentioned some of those stories with your coaches. Why? I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way, but if you do, why is it, do you feel like football, the sport of football, has such strong, a bond between players and coaches, or athletes with athletes, and friendships? Why do you think that is?
I think there's many reasons. I think football is such a passionate game and demands so much of you. I think you see people when they're at their best, but you really get to see them when they're at their worst. And I think the culture around the game, the weight room culture, where we're standing right now, this is, somewhere we love to be, and we get to build relationships with the kids. And there's so much that goes into football that is more than the game. If you think about it, probably 95% of football is training, is practice, is the grind, is relationship building, is team building, culture building. So you only get 10, 11, 12 shots, if you're lucky, a year of games that you actually play. So I think building the relationships in the weight room and and getting to know the kids and do anything you can for them outside of the game of football is really important to most guys that are involved in it.
You know, you having played D1 football, what was it like? You tell me a little bit about like when you finally become head coach and your first week of being head coach. What's that experience like for you?
Being a head coach was a dream come true. And just, I think, standing in the room in front of a group of young men and young women, and knowing that, you know, you're going to have such an impact on their lives moving forward. And that, you know, the decisions you can make they're your decisions. So whether it goes well or it goes bad, there's no one to blame but yourself. And having that responsibility is fun, and if you're passionate about it, that's something that you dream of. And I think what we keep talking about is the relationships that you get to build. And being, like you said, there's nothing like being a head football coach in a lot of kids' lives. So knowing you have that responsibility was something that I take tremendous pride in, and I'll cherish for the rest of my life.
One thing I'm curious about, it's like, right, so I know you've probably had an intensity being a player. You've had a personality being a teacher, because you've been a teacher, and being a head coach. What is that like? Do you teach the same way you coach? Do you play the same way you've coached? Like, what's that experience like?
That's a good question. I think I was actually a little bit less intense as a player, especially in college, because on the offensive side of the ball, I played tight end. It's very mechanical. It's very assignment-based. Defensive guys can usually play with a little bit more passion and a little bit more free. And I was very serious about what I was doing, and didn't talk much. Played as hard as I possibly could, obviously, but I think my coaching, if you ask the kids, like we talk about bringing juice, and like bring the juice is our thing, and juice ball. And when I coach, it's intensity. Like I'm trying to get this juice out of these kids and get the best I can out of these kids. So when I coach, it's really, really intense, and I hold that standard to, you know, all our guys on our staff and on our team, where I was a little bit more relaxed as a player. And I think teaching is a completely different world at times. But it was funny, my mentor here at Barnstable, when I first got the job, kept reminding me, you can teach like you coach. She would come in and she would watch my drills, because I do physical education, so it would be a basketball drills or a football drills, and she's like, teach like you coach. That's what they want. That's why you're here. So I learned that it's okay to teach the same way that I coach. Obviously, it's a little different at times, but probably way more calm in the classroom and in the gym than I am on the football field with these guys.
Yeah. You know, one thing I've always asked coaches that I always find interesting is, and maybe you disagree, but I always felt football teams, I find it rare that every single kid gets along with every single other kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as a coach, what's that like, trying to navigate those conversations with your athletes? And maybe if there's because obviously football, it can get intense even on a practice field. So what's it like having those conversations? How do you connect to the athletes? Does it help that you were an athlete? Kind of, what are those conversations like as a coach?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps having played the game, you know, at the Division I level, remembering, you know, how certain things felt, you know, when there is something going wrong at practice, or if there's a scuffle, or, you know, how was that handled, and, you know, how did I feel as a player when that was happening? And then you take that into coaching. And I mean, it's the old adage, it's like you don't have to like each other, you know, to be successful, but you got to respect each other. And I think that's a huge job for me, to create a culture where the kids respect each other, they hold each other accountable, and yeah, we use the term love. You know, we love each other, but there's a lot of times where you're not going to like each other. And I think, you know, something we talk about as in terms of practice, when it does get physical and when it gets competitive and kids are, you know, sometimes it even turns into a fight, that's almost a good thing to me, because it shows that they care. They're not just going through the motions at practice. And we always make sure if something does happen, you know, we sit the kids down, or we at least grab them and say, hey, we good? And usually, you know, we move on. And there's, you know, it's such a big team. Like some years we have upwards of 100 kids. So yeah, not everyone's going to like each other. But we always make sure we're having conversations. All right, show him respect whether you like him or not. And I think we've done a good job building that culture of respect here.
So, Coach, we talked briefly off camera about, how sports give opportunities to, obviously, athletes and students. Can you tell us a little bit about, your experience at Barnstable and even as a player, too? You've seen firsthand the opportunities that students have been given. Can you tell us a little bit about how that plays a role as a coach and, the players that you've seen have great opportunities even after Barnstable?
Yeah, I think one of the things we take tremendous pride in as a school and as a coaching staff is getting these kids to the next level, whether they're going to play football or not. Getting them if they want to be an electrician, helping them along that path. If they want to go to college, if they want to be a doctor, getting them on the right path. So those are things that we talk about all the time. And I think football creates that vehicle to get these kids to the next level if they have the ability to do so. So I try as hard as I possibly can to try to get these kids recruited, to get them seen by college coaches, because I know it's just the reality. If a kid is a good football player, he might have a better chance to get into a college, and a college that could change his life for the next 40, 50 years. So like I said, we take tremendous pride in that. We've done a really good job at getting kids placed into college in the time that I've been here. And that's something I took from Cheshire Academy, was how being at a prep school, those kids, that the whole goal is to play college. And being here at Barnstable, some of them, like I said, just want to get into a trade or just want to start working right after school. So even those kids, we want to make sure we're providing the right opportunities for them to have those opportunities as well.
That's awesome. Now, you've been able to coach at the college level and at high school level. Is there major differences, or do you still bring that same type of grind and grit from the college level to high school? What's that like, being able to see both sides of the spectrum in that regard?
Yeah, I think I bring, having played and coached at the college level, that type of intensity to the high school level. Whereas if I hadn't had that opportunity, I might not know the ins and outs of what they do at the college level to be so successful. But I think the biggest difference between the college level and the high school level is the amount of time that you get with the kids. So we're limited with time. So what's most important with the time that we have with them? And how can we maximize that time that we have with them? We can't have, meetings in the morning and lifts in the morning and multiple practices, and we're kind of bound to a certain schedule that we need to follow. But I think how we practice, the intensity level of practice, playbooks, even down to how the playbooks were written and designed. I still look back at the playbooks that I used and when I was coaching and playing in college to reference those. Like I said, in terms of how you build a culture, I still research a ton on how college programs are building culture and what are they doing outside of the practice time and the playing time to make sure they're setting these young men and women up for success. So I think that's really shaped the way I coach tremendously. Yeah,
absolutely. There, when you became head coach, was there a thing that you were worried about, like being a head coach, all that responsibility? Was there a responsibility that you were like, did you have any doubt, like, am I ready for it, or what was that like? I just feel like, I know you've been around football, but was there ever something like maybe you weren't ready for, or that you learned along the way?
Yeah, I think we're learning every day, and every group presents different challenges. Every year is different than the one before. The thing I learned being a head coach, especially a young head coach, I think I was 27 or 28 when I got my first head coaching job, is how much I didn't know that I thought I knew at the time. And now looking back on it, I was like, man, I thought I was going to change the world and do this and that, and I had no friggin' clue. Yeah. So learning from those experiences, but I felt like I always had the kids' interest, the best interest in mind. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing right by the players at all times, and that hasn't changed. The X's and O's, have grown, and I've tried to research and get better, and I'm still learning every single day. But yeah, there's definitely hiccups. There's, people in the community that come into play, things that happen in school, dealing with parents, dealing with kids when, not every kid's going to be happy every single year. So those things obviously make you nervous and things you have to deal with. But again, like I said, if you have the kid's best interest in mind, I think you usually come out on top in most of those things.
So, Coach, one thing I'm interested in is you've had experience in playing and working with youth sports and into high school. Can you tell us a little bit about how important, I'm a huge advocate for youth sports, so can you tell us a little bit about how important to you that you feel a youth program is into developing not only people, but developing a high school program and how important that plays a role in all of it in the community?
Yeah, I think that is priority number one. And even when I was interviewing for the Barnstable job here, one of the first phone calls that I made was to Chris Joyce, who was the president of the youth program here. And I wanted to make sure that he was on board with everything I wanted to do here in the town. And I felt honestly like if they wanted to stay separate and do their own thing, or the youth program wasn't in good shape, then it's probably a job I was going to stay away from. And I was lucky enough that they've been really awesome in embracing me and letting me help out at that level as much as possible. So I'm out at youth practice. I try to go at least every night just to peek in. And then we'll spend camp with them. We'll mentor their coaches. We'll clinic their coaches. We hold our own youth clinic here in town for the entire Cape. I coach youth basketball, flag football. That's, like you said, that's the most important thing. If you don't have a strong youth program, you can't succeed. And you got to make sure that these kids are being taught the right things. It's not all about wins and losses at the end of the day. Are we teaching them good values? Are we teaching them good morals at the youth level? And then, creating that vertical alignment where we're carrying on the conversation and making sure we're molding good people. So youth is so important.
Coach, you tell me one of your favorite memories involving football that made you think, man, this is exactly why I love this game.
That's a great question. There's probably a million of them. And I think that answer has evolved over the years. But sometimes it's more about what happens off the field. Like right here in our weight room every year, we do a candlelight ceremony with our seniors where they're able to tell us, how much Barnstable football meant to them, or the game of football or youth football has meant to them. And hearing those answers every year, and I know a lot of programs do that type of stuff, so I've been a part of those traditions for a long time. And I think seeing and hearing those kids' answers every year of how powerful football can be, when they're battling with something in life, they have a loss, or something's not right at home, or things just aren't going their way, they always have football, and being that constant for those kids. And we had a pretty special, powerful group this year that gave some incredible speeches during our candlelight ceremony that I think I'll remember forever. In terms of the game, playing it myself, I think back to just, in high school, there's like vivid memories. We played on a Thursday afternoon one day, and I remember just, putting my hand in the dirt and looking over, and like the sun was setting, and all your high school friends are out there with you, and I was just, you could see the steam coming out of everybody's breath, and just looking at me like, wow, this game is pretty cool. And we're going to war with our buddies here, and that was a vivid. I think we were at Nauset High School, and I just remember that moment being like, man, I love this game. But I think it's so much powerful stuff that happens outside of the game itself that makes it really special to me.
Absolutely. And Coach, obviously our show is called Forward Progress. So if you, I really like that phrase because I think not only is it related to sports, but also in life, right? Making forward progress. Mm-hmm. So if you had a piece of advice to anyone watching, whether it be a coach, a player, someone interested in sports, or just someone in general just watching, what's a piece of advice you'd like to give them to make forward progress in life?
I think, the original question you asked and what we talked about in a word that I always use is passion. And I think when I talk to our kids, or I talk to people that, you know, aren't sure about what they want to do with life and moving forward, it's like, well, what are you passionate about? Because that'll drive you in the right direction. You know, I think too many people get caught up with chasing money or chasing certain things or lifestyles, and find what you're passionate about and chase that. And then everything else will fall into line. And if you love what you're doing every day like I do, and you're passionate about what you're doing every single day, and you wake up with excitement, then you're doing something right. And that'll keep moving you forward. Don't ever chase money. Don't ever chase material things. You know, because I feel like everyone was put here to do something special in their own way, and we got to figure out what that is and chase it.
Absolutely. Coach, thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.